Welcome. This is the Energy and Environment Committee. I'm Councilmember Jose Huizar. I'm joined by Councilmember Dennis Zine. And we have 6 items on the agenda. If it's okay with my colleague, we could take items 4, 5, and 6 on consent. With the back page.
$1.5 million?
Does he have any questions? We could hold, want to hold 4?
Yeah, let's get questions there.
Okay, hold 4 and,
6. Okay, yeah, just 4.
okay, so 5 and 6 we'll put on consent.
Okay.
And if we could do item number 4 now, please.
Number 4. Department of Water and Power report relative to the First Amendment to the existing agreement with Northwest Excavating Incorporated. Extend the term and increase the
Can you
contract amount.
speak up? It's hard to hear you.
Speak
No,
up
I can't hear you.
to the microphone, please.
Ralph Operator with the CLA's office. Department of Water and Power report relative to the First Amendment to the existing agreement with Northwest Excavating Incorporated.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Can you give us a brief presentation on this?
Yes. This contract is a 3-year contract for the construction of electrical conduits and substructures, and it's awarded to Northwest. And we're requesting an extension for 12 months, an additional $1.5 million. So currently the contract expires December 10, 2012, and we're asking for additional 12 months, and it's mainly to support the MTA projects.
Is MTA providing any reimbursement?
Yes, on 3 of the jobs, they're doing 100% reimbursement, and on 1 job, because of the right-of-way, they're providing 50% reimbursement.
And how do you think overall we're working with MTA? I sit on the board at MTA, and issues with DWP and our cooperation often come up. And then, I sit here as the chair of this committee, and I'm wondering, who's right and who's wrong, and do we need better cooperation with MTA as they build their rail lines and all else they're doing?
It's a really large question, but I think they're very happy with the work that we're doing. As an example, they do have a choice to hire their own contractor to do this work because of the urgency. They decided to utilize DWP and our contract that is in place. So, these are mainly relocation jobs where it's either overhead or underground. So they have to go in and replace the conduit, but because of the time frame, then they're using Northwest. Of course, we have our own construction crews, but they're too busy. So overall, I think they're very happy with this type of work that we're doing.
Mr. Zine?
Well, it shows that December 09, they bid the original agreement 3 years, expiring December 2012, not to exceed $9 million. And now we're talking about another $1.5 million, which would be $10.5 million. Are we over budget, and why?
What happened is the contract was approved for 3 years for $9 million. However, for the fiscal year 2011-2012, because of lack of funding, the contract was suspended. So the crews went home. However, that was in November of 2000, and it's in the CA report, and it's also in the board package. However, because of these MTA projects, we had to reactivate the contract April of 2012. So currently, we're on target to spend the $9 million until December of 2012. However, the jobs are going to extend beyond the December 2012.
So if we would have completed it, we would have been at 10.5.
No,
We would have been at 9.2, so now we're $1.5 million over because we extended it, because we didn't do the work when we should have?
This is what we call a price and time contract, 3-digit, and it's only used on an as-needed basis. There's no guarantee, no commitment. The only guarantee we have to the contractor is 25% of the estimated amount of the contract. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. So let's say the $1.5 million additional money is approved. We only spend $700,000. The contract is canceled. That's it. We only spend what we need. There's no commitment in terms of we have to spend the additional fund.
And this provide underground services. So if we suspended it for a year, how are we providing power if we didn't complete the project?
We have our own construction crews that can do conduit installation and substructures. However, we cannot support the MTA project because of the short time frame, and that's the reason we have to bring in the contractor back to be able to meet the schedule, the very tight schedule.
Okay.
Councilman, my name is Robert Roth with the CAO's office. Just wanted to add that the department's actual expenses for DWP work that's not reimbursable is currently $4.6 million, which is below the authorized amount. If not for the MTA reimbursable amounts, the total expenditure would be within the,
Well, if it's for an MTA project, why can't we charge it all off to them? Is it used to anyone else, or is it just the MTA that's using that?
When we suspended the contract, the expenditure on just LUP jobs were about 4.6 million.
Yeah, but what we're doing helps, or is it the only source of power for the MTA? What we're doing with this project?
Yes.
This provides power to the MTA?
It relocates overhead distribution lines and underground, not necessarily it's just a relocation of what we have existing to support the different areas that, these 4 different projects.
So why don't we get a full reimbursement from MTA?
We are getting full reimbursement, 100% on 3 jobs, and I have a list of these 3
Okay.
jobs. And 1 job, because of the right-of-way, it depends who's there first. So on the aviation job, the 1.2, they're going to reimburse 50%.
Okay, all right,
So they are reimbursing 100% on 3 jobs.
okay, very good.
Mr. Zine is satisfied. You can move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
No objection?
No objection.
No objection. All right.
Save money, you know that.
We can have a controller here. Future controller is going to make sure.
Watch everything.
Item number 1.
Dollar. Item number 1 sounds good.
Okay. This matter was continued from your October 17th meeting. It relates to a CEQA appeal from the Citizens Committee to Save Elysian Park relative to Department of Water and Power's Elysian Reservoir Water Quality Improvement Project.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. If we could, I'd like to start off with a brief PowerPoint presentation that might answer some questions on the project and just where we are. My name is Glenn Singley. I'm the Director of Water Engineering at the Department of Water and Power.
You work for Big Ron, huh?
I do. So I have to be on my best behavior.
You better, he's right next to you.
Right.
Is he big round because of his job or because of his height?
Oh.
Okay.
The reason we're here and the reason we're doing this project is basically to satisfy 2 regulatory requirements from EPA, the long-term 2 enhanced surface water treatment rule and the stage 2 disinfectants and disinfection byproduct rule. Both involve open reservoirs and needing to cover those. The surface water treatment rule specifically says we can't serve water from an open reservoir, and the disinfection byproduct rule says we've got to get these disinfection byproducts down to a certain level, lower than they have been in the past. And one way to accomplish that is to change our system from chlorine to chloramines and also cover these reservoirs to reduce the creation of algae and more organics, which combine with these disinfectants to produce these disinfection byproducts. So each of our open reservoirs in the system need to be covered.
How many do we have?
We have 10 open reservoirs, or had 10 open reservoirs that came under the jurisdiction of these 2 regulations. 5 are now in compliance. Upper and Lower Hollywood reservoirs have been bypassed and we have 2 large tanks for those. Encino Reservoir has been bypassed and just taken offline. Lower Stone Canyon Reservoir also has been taken offline, and we've added a pump station filtration plant at the bottom to take some of the water out of that reservoir, as well as Encino. And then Santa Ynez Reservoir, we covered Santa Ynez with a floating cover. That's in Pacific Palisades area. The remaining reservoirs that are still open include Silver Lake and Ivanhoe, which are being taken care of by the Headworks Reservoir by Griffith Park. Upper Stone Canyon Reservoir, the board had decided on a floating cover, and that's in the Bel Air area in Stone Canyon. Los Angeles Reservoir will be we'll be placing these shade balls on top of the reservoir, and we'll have a ultraviolet filtration plant or ultraviolet disinfection plant below the reservoir to take care of the possible contamination from Los Angeles Reservoir. And finally, Elysian Reservoir, subject matter of today, a floating cover, which has been proposed by the board. This is a picture, a diagram of, or a picture of Elysian Reservoir, and in yellow is the actual area that's controlled by the Department of Water now. This area is basically fenced off, and there's no access to the reservoir currently. And also currently we have shade balls on Elysian Reservoir that are not depicted here. The purpose of the project for Elysian Reservoir basically is to ensure quality, reliability, and stability of the water supply, primary objectives to comply with the water quality standards, and then also to maintain the local storage to meet our drinking water demand. So it's a very critical reservoir in the system. A secondary objective proposed by the EIR was to provide publicly accessible recreation at the reservoir property.
Do we have recreational property there now?
Basically, that whole area is cordoned off. It's fenced off, so there's no recreation. There are trails above the reservoir, so you can walk on those trails, but there's no impact to those trails or the roadway up around the reservoir. The buried reservoir, the proposed project in the EIR was to demolish the reservoir itself, construct a new buried concrete covered reservoir in the same footprint. We'd maintain approximately the same amount of water storage capacity, and then cover that concrete reservoir with 3 feet of topsoil and create a publicly accessible recreation area on top of the reservoir. And it would be about a 5.5-year construction duration. So here are a few of the affected sites. We had a staging area to the southeast. Stockpile area to the north, and a truck turnaround where they would come up on the north side of the reservoir there. The first alternative is a floating cover alternative, and that consists of demolishing the reservoir liner, constructing the new reservoir liner, installing that membrane floating cover, maintaining that same water storage, and then adding some access around the reservoir to a wildlife pond that's being proposed in the rear of the property at the north. And that construction would be about 2.5 years. Proposed enhancements with the floating cover include, improved entry gate and landscaping, a new fencing around the property, colored asphalt around the roadway, a new asphalt paving, a wildlife pond in the back. I guess I can point to some of these wildlife pond in the back, trees and landscaping around the whole area, a rockfall barrier because this is a pretty steep slope on this side, and if we're going to have people walking around there, we'll need to protect them from any potential rock slides. Park trail loops not shown, but in the rest of the park area, as well as a park pipe replacement, which is just a critical piece for the Department of Rec and Parks of their system, providing recreation in the rest of the park. And they have a particular problem with one of the restrooms that we agreed to look for improvements as mitigation for this project. Here's just a picture of our most recently completed project, the Santa Ynez floating cover. The material is it's a plastic that's fairly thick and durable. They last about 20 years before they need to be replaced. But this is right in the Palisades. And we did some of the enhancements. The color's not real good in this picture, but we did change the color of the roadway, enhance some of the vegetation around the reservoir, as well as doing some rockscaping on the north side of the reservoir. The second alternative was an aluminum cover, demolished, similar to the floating cover, only constructing with a lightweight aluminum, and that would be with or without solar panels, again maintaining basically the same water storage capacity, and we'd also could accommodate access around the reservoir to the wildlife pond. This would be about a 4-year construction duration. These are some examples of existing an existing aluminum cover in our Van Norman area, and solar panels depicting solar panels that might be placed on top of that aluminum roof, if desired. Here are some of the environmental impacts of the project. Aesthetics, basically less than significant, not much different than the current reservoir. Air quality, because we're in Los Angeles, any major construction creates some unavoidable significant impacts due to the construction activities. Biological resources, less than significant in each case. Cultural resources, again, less than significant. Noise, there will be noisy equipment out there. Significant in the buried reservoir because of the duration and amount of construction. Less than significant with the floating cover because it's just less intensive construction. Aluminum cover, a little more construction, more columns in the reservoir, as opposed to no columns with the simple floating cover. Traffic, with mitigation, less than significant. It is the park area, but more truck trips, obviously, with the buried reservoir because of the intensity of the construction, less so with the floating cover, medium amount with the aluminum cover. Here's just a depiction of some of the impacts, about 48,000 truck trips with the buried reservoir, 11,800 with the floating cover, and 15,000 with the aluminum cover. Peak equipment, a little more with the buried reservoir. Peak personnel, same. Total volume of earthwork, significant amount with the buried reservoir. We have to dig down the sides and recreate that reservoir completely with steeper sides and digging that out to get the volume of water that we need. Floating cover mainly is just putting that cover on the existing reservoir, so little earthwork done. Some improvements to the bottom, but no major earthwork, and less than 1,000 cubic yards with the aluminum cover. Recreation area created, yes, with the buried reservoir, planning that recreation area on top of the reservoir cover. With the floating cover, we would now add access around the reservoir to the wildlife pond that is proposed in both the floating cover and aluminum cover case, but no access directly on top of the reservoir footprint, which is about 7 acres. Costs, the buried reservoir, about $110 million versus $25 million for the floating cover and $55 million for the aluminum cover. At the time when these were prepared, we were trying to get apples and apples, so looking at a 60-year equivalent cost. So bringing the cost of the buried reservoir back a little bit to the $110 million because the 60-year life the actual life of the buried reservoir would be more than that, but we brought those costs back to the 60-year cost. Floating cover includes replacement of the membrane about every 20 years. And aluminum cover, I think we replaced the aluminum cover once, just the skin of the aluminum cover, to get to those numbers. The length of construction significantly more with buried reservoir, about 2.5 years for the floating cover, because we would do it by season, and about 4 years for the aluminum cover, and different construction times here just because of the time it will take to engineer and design the different alternatives. In summary, the buried reservoir has the greatest environmental impacts because of the construction mainly and the bringing material and transporting the soil. But it does meet all the objectives, including the accessible recreation area on top. Aluminum cover alternative reduces the environmental impacts of construction, but does meet water quality and water storage objectives, but no recreation on the reservoir, just simply around the reservoir and in the back, as well as the floating cover, least environmental impacts because of really reduced construction, but does meet all the water quality and water storage objectives, but again, no recreation directly on the reservoir. Staff recommended to our board the use of the floating cover because it does meet the water quality and storage objectives. It is the environmentally superior alternative, mainly because of the reduced construction impacts that would be involved. It does have the lowest capital and initial capital and 60-year cost, and it does have the shortest construction duration. The board did take action on April 17th, 2012. They certified the EIR that it was prepared in compliance with CEQA. They adopted a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan with findings of a statement of overriding considerations, approved the floating cover alternative with the additional enhancements that were included in my previous slide of about $3.16 million. Those are the improvements to the park, and also approved the establishment of a $12.5 million community parks fund. So that's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, Mr. Zine?
Well, how many years have the reservoir's been there? Probably before you were born.
Yes, it was, I'm thinking 1930s in this case, but original reservoir earlier than that.
So they've been the same reservoir, they've never been rebuilt, but they've held the water and distributed for all those years.
It was originally a covered reservoir, in fact.
It was?
Yes.
What happened to the cover?
It fell down. It was a wood structure. It just got old, and they decided with enough chlorine we could serve the water and keep the water at a standard that would be acceptable to the residents.
Some of us have survived that chlorine in the water, being a native
That's
entry,
true.
you know. But now the standard has changed, so we've got to do something to either cover it or bury it or do something with it.
Yes,
That's the new standard.
correct.
And then the report calls for the cover, which is probably the most economical and meets the guidelines
Yes.
for water quality. And the other issue is this recreational part where they wanted to build basically a park on top of it. But once you do that, then how do you get access to it if you need to do something with it?
Well, we would have access portals for the reservoir, so on the sides. So we would have an access road around it, and then options to get down in and maintain the reservoir.
And then the issue of safety and security. If someone were to have some bad intentions to have access to the water supply, how do we maintain that security if we have public access at that location?
Well, much the same as we do today. It will be fenced. The reservoir itself will be fenced. There'll be security fencing, cameras, potential of personnel there, but not intended to have that. The reservoir cover itself won't be open, so you can't simply throw something over and contaminate the supply.
Have we had any incidents where there's been that type of situation, contamination based upon?
We haven't. We have 4 or 5 of these floating covers in various parts of the city, and we
But
haven't.
anywhere in the world, have we seen that happen where someone with ill
I haven't heard of any, terrorist attacks or
That
anything
potential
against.
exists if someone were to have some idea to do something like that?
Could, but it's a fairly difficult proposition to contaminate that large of a reservoir and have an impact. So there are easier targets. I think that's mainly been the reasoning behind things and the reality of things, that people haven't tried to really contaminate a reservoir because of the volume of material it would take.
Okay. All right, so if we move forward with this, would there be additional cost to the consumers, or is that all part of the budgets? In other words, would we have to jack up rates again to cover this, or do we have sufficient dollars to meet this demand?
It's included in that. This is already included in that, in the rate adjustments that have been made.
Okay.
Made for that.
There wouldn't be any additional increase?
Specifically for this project, no.
You agree with that, Yancy? We want to make Rhonda, she's paying attention.
She's still wondering about last night's victory of
Yeah, she is your
President.
representative. No, I think obviously we
or
have
defeat for her candidate. I don't know. You got your candidate to win or not.
Cardenas for Congress, right? So we don't have any, we have a couple options, but we got to do something. We can't just leave it as it is.
Right.
the bottom line is something's going to happen. This is the most economical, meets the standard, and we either just do spend a lot more money burying it and put something else in place.
Yes.
All right, is the city attorney here? City attorney's office. Can you guys give him space? I just have a couple of questions. After all, this is an appeal, and I just want to be clear that under the city attorney's advice, the appellant's letter states that the DWP's action and selected alternative violates CEQA. Can you advise the committee on that statement?
I think we have staff here from
Okay.
counsel for the DWP who prepared to respond to the substance of the appeal.
Okay.
Hi, sir. I'm Janice Sidley. I'm a deputy city attorney assigned to the Department of Water and Power. And this document was reviewed by the city attorney, and it was stamped as consistent and as to form. It is an appropriate document.
Your original review, how about the appeal? Anything that came up new that we should be aware of, or you think we are proper in terms of us moving forward? You still stand with the original?
I
Okay.
stand behind what was originally stamped.
So the
Okay.
proposal that's been made, discussed, the city attorney agrees with.
The presentation that you've just seen is exactly what the board action was.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what's up on appeal. And the board took an action which was consistent and appropriate with CEQA.
And you agree with that?
Yes, I
Agree
do.
with it. Okay. And this committee cannot adjust the mitigation fund or give specific direction other than to approve or deny the action, correct?
Right, your role will be either to grant the appeal, in which case you should state the grounds for granting the appeal, or deny the appeal, and in a sense approving the project. And then if you do that, if you deny the appeal, then you would make the appropriate findings, which would be simply you could simply adopt the findings of the board, and then that would
Okay.
move on to council. Of course, you want to hear from the appellant if they're...
Yeah, we have one public speaking card, and I assume it's the appellant. So let me invite the appellant up at this time. Sally Neubauer? And you are the appellant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Sally Neubauer. I'm with the Citizens Committee to Save Elysian Park. As you probably know, the reservoirs have been in mediation with the Department of Water and Power. Community groups have been in mediation with the department for over 20 years to resolve the fates of the different reservoirs. And Elysian's desire was the community around Elysian's desire was to preserve the beauty of the 40-acre canyon that the reservoir sits in. Councilman Zine, the original reservoir was the turn of the century. So there's been a reservoir in there since about 1905. Over the years, it's changed in form. It got a roof at one point in time, and it was expanded twice. But the bottom line is, it was always a beautiful piece of property to gaze upon, and it sits in the middle of a 40-acre canyon in Elysian Park. So when the environmental document says that the aesthetics will not be affected, it's wrong. The aesthetics will very much be affected by that plastic cover that you saw a picture of. You can walk around the reservoir and you can see it from many, many points. You can walk on the road or you can walk on the pathways. You can see it from many points. The fund that was created was specifically for city parks and not for Elysian Park, and we feel that this is a gross oversight from the commission, that if a fund for parks is created, it should be for Elysian Park, because basically this plastic cover is going to affect 40 acres of Elysian Park.
You could have another minute or two.
Okay. There was mention of the enhancements that are going to be done and the access. Well, the access to the wildlife pond will be a fenced roadway. It's not going to be something that will be a park-like experience. It will be a roadway that is colored, maybe it'll be colored green, I don't know. But, you know, the committee is not very interested in a fenced roadway for park access. The wildlife pond originally we thought was going to be unfenced, but now it appears that the whole compound is still going to remain fenced. And it's a big difference from what the buried tank would have accomplished, because the buried tank would have returned that whole bottom of the canyon, which is about 14 acres. It would have returned that whole acreage to park use, which is very, very poorly served in this area. Park space is very, very limited in the inner city. Elysian Park is very well used, and that meadow would have been a terrific addition to the communities around Elysian Park, including Lincoln Heights, including Boyle Heights, including downtown, including Echo Park. So we feel that the language that the commission included is not adequate, and we feel that the environmental document is not adequate. We worked long and hard to find a solution that would preserve the beauty of Elysian Park, and that solution was denied to us. And it was denied erroneously simply because the department feels it doesn't have the money, whereas it can find the money for Stone, it can find the money for Silver Lake and Ivanhoe, but it can't find the money for Elysian.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. In terms of the, can I ask DWP staff, in terms of the Community Parks Fund, is that a proper use of these funds for this project?
I'm not sure that's, I guess that's somewhat of a legal conclusion. We believe that it is. I've been advised by our counsel that indeed it is. I'd like to make a clarifying point with respect to the last commentator.
Sure.
On two items. Number one, that $12.5 million Community Parks Fund that is proposed as a part of this project, there's specific language in the resolution that adopts this that states that the Department of Water and Power will use its best efforts to use those funds for park improvements and park investments in and around the Elysian Park area. So there is a specific reference to that in the document. There's other point that was made with respect to the wildlife pond being fenced. That's not correct. It's not the wildlife pond itself that's being added. That is a feature that is added as part of this to help provide a remaining open water feature in that area will not be fenced in. It will be open. So I think there perhaps was a misunderstanding by the commentator.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much. Mr. Zine, is there a motion on this, or would a...
Motion to approve the report from the commission.
Motion to approve the, to deny the appeal and approve the motion by the commission and sustain the findings in that report. So we'll move that and second it, and we'll move. Two
Okay.
committees, do we have quorum? We don't have quorum.
You have quorum, but you could forward it to the council as communication from the chair.
Okay, we'll forward that to the council from as a communication to the, from the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
That concludes that item. Next item, please.
Mr. Chairman, actually, items 2 and 3, if you'd like, since they're very similar renewable solar energy contracts, I'd like to recommend you consider them together.
Yes, sir,
also-
please, thank you.
Item number 2 relates to DWP report relative to the power sales agreement with SCAPA for the Copper Mountain Solar 3 project. And number 3, similar DWP report relative to the K Road Moapa Solar Project power purchase agreement.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Randy Howard, Department of Water and Power. I have with me Mike Webster, and I have two gentlemen from the City Attorney's Office, Vaughn Manassian and Jean-Claude Bertet. These were the two attorneys representing the city on the negotiations for the two solar projects. So we're going to go ahead and do them together.
Okay.
And we'll walk through, we have a number of slides. We'll try to minimize some of these slides. You have the presentation.
Have it here.
go ahead and jump to, yes. What we wanted to go to, just a quick overview and reminder, our objectives here are twofold. One is to meet the renewable portfolio standard. The requirements are to meet 20% on average for the first 3 years through 2013. Then by the end of 2016, for that calendar year, to be at 25%, and by the calendar year 2020, to be at 33%. The other objective we have, or mandate that we have to address, is the mandate of eliminating coal power from our portfolio. And so we have depicted previously to you the first objective there is the Navajo generating station. We'd like to divest of our Navajo generating station assets by the end of 2015. We hope to make that up through using energy efficiency, renewable energy, and then lastly, using natural gas that we're unable to meet the other objectives using the renewables. Some of the solar projects, some of our deficits, wanted to go over that. Where are we today with our RPS? And you can see from this graph that in 2012, we are coming up still net short. We are not at 20% right now, and we need to be at 20% on average through 2013, as I just indicated. This is our net short position, and what we wanted to show you is the two projects we have before you. We have been in negotiations on these projects well over a year. They came out of a request for proposals in 2011. And in the green, the lime green, you can see what would be made up with the Sempra Energy. It's a 210 megawatt is our piece. It's 250 megawatt solar project. Our portion would be 210. It'd be shared with the cities of Burbank. And then the K-Road Mwapa solar project is the purple, and that's what it would contribute towards meeting our objectives. So we're still net short, but these two projects go a long way in meeting our RPS requirements. Go ahead. We're not just doing large-scale solar, as you're aware. We have a very aggressive solar incentive program. It says we're about 51 megawatts currently installed. That number just kicked up to about 60 megawatts is the last report that just came out. We have our active feed-in tariff program, our 10 megawatt pilot. We're closing up on that now with negotiations and the agreements, and we're preparing to launch the 150 megawatts of feed-in tariff within the city. So this would be solar built within the city. We have our utility built program too. So we're concluding our construction of approximately 8.5 megawatt project up at our Pine Tree Wind Farm, and we've already completed 11.6 megawatts of solar. So some of our RPS objectives in our selection, how did we get to these projects? We're looking for geographic diversity. We did that in our wind portfolio. We have some in the Pacific Northwest, some in the Utah, Wyoming area, some in our local Tehachapi Mountains. So at any one time, our objective is the wind is blowing somewhere, and we're getting some of the wind resources into the city. We're doing the same thing with the solar because there's a potential of puffy clouds or cloud cover or coastal clouds coming in over the city. So we're going to have some projects here within the city and the region, some out in our Mojave Desert and some further out. These two projects meet that solar diversity off into Nevada area. We're trying to maximize the use of our transmission line. These projects will utilize transmission related to our Navajo generating station and our Marketplace substation, so it's existing transmission. We do not have to build at least new transmission other than some generation ties into our stations. We want options and flexibilities related to procurement and for future operations. We're trying to cluster our projects going forward, key objective. We wouldn't be doing these power purchase agreements if it were not for the tax incentives. These developers can get the federal tax incentives. They can pass on some of that benefit to our ratepayers. Otherwise, we would probably just be hiring contractors, build them, and turn them over to us for future operations. We're doing the power purchase agreements, so they bring the tax incentives, and we have options within these agreements to then buy them when those tax incentives have expired, and then we can own and operate these projects going forward. The first one, Copper Mountain project, again, 250 megawatt project. It's a joint project with the city of Burbank. They will take 40 megawatts, we'll take 250. It's located right in the Boulder City Valley. It's nearby where we have current crews based out for doing transmission. As you probably know, we operated the Hoover Dam nearby for the first 50 years of operation. We were involved in the construction of Hoover Dam. These projects sit right outside of two large electrical stations that we operate, the McCullough Station and the Marketplace Station. Sempra is the developer, and they have one current operating 58 megawatt project, another one under construction, and the Copper Mountain 3, the largest, is the one that is before you today for procurement. And you can see it's a short transmission line that's part of the project that they will construct that directly into our electrical station. Go ahead. Can you go back? Go back. Some of the additional elements, so the full commercial operation date would be December 31st of 2015. Why that date? Because starting 2016 calendar year, we have a compliance requirement with the state for 25%. So we want this fully operational by December 31st of 2015, and they've agreed that they're going to be able to do that. The capacity factor is 25%, the cost 95.75. Again, the total annual output is up there. It will achieve about 1.9% of our RPS requirements. I jump to K-Road. K-Road is another 250 megawatt project. It sits about 30 miles north of the city of Las Vegas. It is nearby an intersection and a location called the Crystal Substation. Crystal is a substation that brings home for our transmission line that it intersects there, related to our Navajo generating station. Part of our strategy in divesting of that coal unit is to retain a level of our ownership in that transmission line in which we could bring additional renewables home. So the project site sits on the Mta tribal lands, and then the transmission line that would intertie to the Crystal substation goes out onto BLM lands. And in this case, LADWP would be the sole off-taker of this project, the entire 250 megawatts. Some of the information related to this, the capacity factor is higher. It's a little different technology that's being proposed. It's a tilt axis or tracking system, so it follows the sun, so a little higher output. The capacity factor is 32% in this project. The price is $91.69 for us. It's fixed over the entire 25-year period, and it will meet 2.95% of our RPS requirement. Both of these projects have ownership options. They start at 10 years, and there's multiple options that we would have. We would provide 6 months prior notification, up to 6 months prior notification of an option date that the city was interested in acquiring these projects, and then we'd bring that back to our governance structure for approval. This project, located on the tribal lands, has a 50-year lease, so it's expected that this project at some point, the solar panels have an expected life of approximately 25 to 30 years, that you would replace those panels with a new technology and retain the site. Can you go back to the transmission line in this one? This project is a little bit different than the last one on the Sempra. For the Sempra project, they're proposing to build the transmission line to interconnect to our station. They will build it, own it through the period until we would take the option of acquiring that project or through the life of the PPA. In this project, because of the uniqueness of the Navajo agreement on the transmission system, K-Road will build a new 6-mile transmission line. It will construct into the Crystal Substation. Prior to the generation coming to our system, LADWP would acquire that transmission line, so it would become owned by LADWP with a cost not to exceed $18 million. So we'd pay whatever the cost is to construct it to our standards, but it would be not to exceed $18 million. And we'll, again, use the existing capacity we have on our transmission line to bring it home. At this point, we'll take any questions. There is one item that the city attorney has asked me to raise. We have walked through with both these projects the due diligence related to quantities of dollars related to potential issues that could occur during either construction or operations. And in the CAO report, there is a $5 million, it indicates a $5 million level for the K-Road that is actually, once operation does occur, it's $35 million that they would post by bond for any issues that could occur. Both contracts have provisions related to change of law, related to ensuring that these two projects would meet the requirements and the compliance obligations of the RPS requirements in California. So at this point, we'd be open to any questions you might have.
Any questions, Mr. Zine?
20 years, $40.2 million. We've calculated that $40.2 million for 20 years. What do we know what's down 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years from now? Because we didn't have solar a long time ago. The renewables that we're into now, coal was very important at one time. Now we're phasing that out. When we're calculating out 20 years, and the cost over that period of time would be 40.2. What are we using as a criteria for that?
So what we're looking at is what would be the capital cost to build these facilities, and over what period of time do we want to amortize that cost? That's kind of where you get, what's the life expectancy of a solar panel? And as indicated, typically we're seeing or understanding from the manufacturers that we could expect a 25 to 30 year. There is some declination on the output of panels with age, and we factored that, but we're looking at over what period of time should we appreciate these assets, and standard for a power purchase agreement is 20 to 25 years.
And who maintains the panels?
The developers will own and operate these until such time that the city would consider, or SCAPA would consider exercising the option to then purchase them.
So they're going to build them, operate them, and then we purchase from them.
That's correct.
Do we have wind in the Riverside County area, the wind tunnels, the wind power? Do we have any of those that we own or that we lease? Or
we do not. In Riverside, we do. Up in the Tehachapis outside the town of Mojave, we have our Pine Tree Wind Farm.
And how has that worked out economically for us?
That has worked out. It's a very good structure there. In that case, we had developed our contractor design build to the city of LA, so we do operate that facility. And one of the reasons for doing so is to learn a little bit more about the technology, become much more familiar on how to enter into more of these power purchase agreements. So in that case, we do own and operate that facility.
And that's proven effective?
Yes, it has.
Okay. And with this particular contract, have we looked at other vendors, other developers, or this was a sole source, or how did we come about with this particular?
As indicated in January of 2011, we we issued a request for proposals through Southern California Public Power Authority, SCAPA, and we had approximately, I think Mike's going to go there, we had approximately 220 proposals come in.
How many?
220.
There's that many out there.
That was wind, solar, geothermal. It was all types of renewable, but the emphasis was truly solar in that RFP. We had a rigorous process in which we then screened those projects as they came in, narrowed them down, put point values to the specific projects related to LADWP. That could be back to the criteria of clustering, location to transmission, price being one of those elements, types of technologies. And we ended up bringing these down to the highest priority projects for us, or those that were rated the highest for us to enter into negotiations.
So you did your homework.
We believe so.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we first go to public comment, and then I'll have some questions for staff, and I think the ratepayer advocate's here as well. I want to ask him about these agreements, but first let's go to public comments. So, yeah, we'll ask him to come up. W.E. Shennework, you signed up for item 2 and 3, and we're doing both together, so.
Okay, well, one comment will cover both of them, I think.
Okay.
I'm William Shennework. I did solar research in graduate school. I'm a licensed nuclear engineer, mechanical engineer, and I have a FAA A&P ticket. August 212, FERC requests suspension of California's cap and trade. It's not too hard to extrapolate that AB 32 will be just as unenforceable as carbon trade because merchant generators refused to participate. Future renewable energy investments may collapse, Copper Mountain and the other one included. Assuming $4 a watt and the 15% utilization, which I think is more likely, both systems will need a 3% a year cash flow just to keep the junk man away. The 3% a year uses up the $96 a megawatt hour contracted price, nothing left for debt service, rent, or property taxes. If AB 32 is canceled, these may end resulting in bankruptcies. Then we'll be left with taking over the crumbling solar PV plants. Both of them, or LADWP, will lose about 500 megawatts total. Burbank may bail. Just to fix things, you may have to cough up $10 million a year and $50 million up front. And when you get done with all the costs, you're going to end up paying between 2 and 2.5 times what's called brown power cost. If you extrapolate, the problem is these fix the price of renewable energy, and if you extrapolate over the 1/3 in the 20 or 25 years, you could end up with a net cost of $4,000 per Los Angeles resident.
Thank you very much, sir. Next is William Anderson.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for having me here to go ahead and be a part of this today. And I just want to go ahead and express the concern that I have for having the solar field out on our reservation. First of all, the one part that the impact is mostly with our health. We have a coal plant that's right next to us that's just causing a lot of issues with our people right next to it. We're just a few hundred yards away from where it's at. And when this project started to come along, I wanted to make sure I wanted to be a part of it to ensure that it goes through. And there's going to be no emissions that's going to be coming from there. It's clean energy, it's renewable, and what we have is we have the perfect opportunity to go ahead and provide that here for the city here of Los Angeles. We want to go ahead and ensure that we go ahead and do what's right and what's responsible. You know, you can't put a price on people's lives when it comes to health. It's a lot of issues that are coming to our people right now, and with the Navajo Generating Station, again, I applaud the efforts that you guys can go ahead and switch over away from coal from there to go ahead and work towards renewables. economic impact that it's going to have with our community, it's not just going to be within our reservation alone. It's going to be within the surrounding community as well, including Southern Nevada, even clear here in Southern California. Our people right now, we're just a small minority group out there, and there's not too many of us there, but we want to go ahead and ensure that we provide the right type of development for our people, so that way we can strive and move forward. We want to ensure that we keep moving and pushing forward. We want to go ahead and use this as a starting point to go ahead and start more economic development out there on the reservation. We're already projecting towards other projects we have, as well as another renewable site that we have in the works right now. It's going through the NEPA process, but that's for future development we're working on. We want to make sure that we do what's right for our people out there, and to make sure that we have this type of example set out there. If this goes on, this will be one of the largest solar facilities that's going to be in Indian country. We'll be one of the first people to go ahead and provide this type of scale. That's going to be on this industrial scale. That's going to be provided up for a lot more people out there. So I have a flash drive for you guys to go ahead and look at. It was done, a documentary done last year. So if you have the time to go ahead and peruse it, just go ahead and do that. I'll just go ahead and just drop it off right here.
Great.
Thank you again.
Very much. Jessica Goodhart, and after Jessica Goodhart is Evan Gillespie.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon about the K-Road project. My name is Jessica Goodhart. I work for the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, and we've long been advocating for development projects that when there's public investment, that it results in real benefits for the community and good jobs. And this project is exactly that kind of project. Not only is it going to help us meet our renewable goals with clean energy, as the previous speaker said, it's also going to create hundreds of good union jobs for the community. And crucially, there's been collaboration with the community most impacted by this project, and of course by our heavy dependence on coal. And finally, there's been a plan put in place to protect the wildlife that's been impacted by the project. So in short, this seems like a great opportunity for Los Angeles, and I'm pleased to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan Gillespie.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Evan Gillespie. I'm here on behalf of the Sierra Club and our 15,000 members here in the city of Los Angeles. I'm also here to speak in support of the project. The club looks at a lot of different projects across the country when it comes to clean energy, and it's hard for us, I think, to find a project that's better than this one. Our top priority around the country is transitioning utilities like Los Angeles Department of Water and Power from coal to clean energy. And I just want to highlight a couple things about this project that I think are really innovative and precedent setting for the country. The first is that the Department of Water and Power is really approaching this from two specific, to hit two goals at once. We're building out our clean energy and we're getting off of coal, and we're doing it in a way by achieving those two outcomes at the same time that's cost effective. The project is also it provides incredible co-benefits. We're not just creating clean energy for the sake of creating clean energy, but we're creating good union jobs. We're helping create a pathway to a clean energy economy for a community that's been burdened with coal pollution for decades. And I think, more than anything else, we don't see enough projects like this around the country, and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the city of Los Angeles, can really hold this up as a model for how you get off of coal cost effectively, how you build out clean energy, and how you do it in a way that really provides clear, tangible benefits when it comes to job creation and economic opportunity for the communities around these projects. So we're in fully support of the project. We commend DWP for their sort of innovative thinking and how they've approached these two problems and really tried to solve them both at once. And we hope the project goes forward.
Great. Thank you very much. Michelle from the Los Angeles Business Council. Some of the same people. You guys see each other at different events and
I just saw you. Hello. I want to echo the comments of our friends at Lane and at the Sierra Club. This project is manifold. It helps us get off coal, but it also produces great jobs and helps us transition from coal to renewable energy. The LABC represents 350 members in Los Angeles and the surrounding communities, and we have been in the solar space for quite some time, advocating most recently and currently for solar feed-in tariff. And there's many ways of achieving our renewable energy goals. One is doing it through local DG, and another way is doing it through large-scale renewable development. And we commend K-Road and the DWP for coming together to find a solution. This is truly one of those A-plus programs. It's environmentally and economically viable for the DWP, helps them meet their renewable energy goals. It provides union jobs, and it helps us get off fossil fuel. So we very much urge you to move forward with the project today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment, and I'd like to invite up the ratepayer advocate, and I understand that Dr. Pickle has looked at both project agreements, and Dr. Pickle, I just want to hear your general thoughts on both of these agreements.
Absolutely. I'm Fred Pickle, Executive Director of the Office of Public Accountability and Ratepayer Advocate for the City of LA. I have 2 short slides for you. One is, why am I talking about this? The OPA is charged with commenting on things that materially affect water and power rates. This is another layer in the review process that started with the recent rate increases. It, as I'm intending to implement, also covers major contracts and programs and planning reviews. The LADWP's 2 solar projects are being put in primarily to address the 2016 target of 25% from renewables. One question that's a part of this is that mandate too high? I didn't address that question. That's more appropriately discussed in an IRP process. But for these contracts, I drew on my own experience working in the renewable space since the late 70s, and also I was assisted in the review by PA Consulting. The review was supported very cooperatively by LADWP. The core issue the 2 core issues from my perspective are the pricing and contract terms attractive? And the second is, do these projects have the ability to perform in meeting the RPS mandate? My conclusions are that I recommend approval of the Copper Mountain Solar 3 and the K-Road projects, those PPAs, given their contract characteristics and the time constraints of meeting the 2016 mandate.
Okay, thank you. So bottom line, how competitive are these prices for the ratepayer?
For solar projects, large-scale solar projects, they're very competitive. So much so that you want to check the security, and with the additional guarantees that they've sought in these projects, we feel are adequately supported.
And assuming these agreements are approved, what's the impact on the recent rate increase that we proposed, if any?
On the recent rate increase, these projects don't substantially start during the period of the recent rate increase. One of them might start delivering toward the end, but we also looked at the financial plan that was covered, the 5-year financial plan that was included in the rate review, and the prices these contracts have achieved are better than what was projected might be achieved in the recent financial plans of the rate review. So better than expected.
Okay.
And then this page is PA's full opinion on this. I'm not going to bore you by reading through that.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Zhang, any questions for the ratepayer? I want to briefly bring up the staff again from DT. Thank you very much, Dr. Pickle. We appreciate your review. And for staff, finally, just a couple of questions. There's a request to expedite approval by the end of the year. Can you again briefly explain why we need to expedite this?
My name is Mike Webster. I'm Assistant Director of our Power System Development Division. And the reason it needs to be expedited is we are counting delivery at the end of 2015 for the full output of the plant. Any shortfall in 2016 would need to be made up with other types of renewables or short-term purchases, which could be more costly. So for the Sempra project, if we do not get approval by the end of the year, the commercial operation date slips 1 day for each day delayed because they need that much in their schedule. For the K-Road project, it's even more critical because if it's delayed past December 31st, they will not have time to mobilize the necessary crews to take care of the tortoises and to move the tortoises to a new habitat that the Moapan tribe is providing for them, because they can only move during certain parts of the year. So if they cannot mobilize and safely relocate those tortoises, then there's an automatic 6-month delay in the agreement. So we lose half of 2016 right out of the gate.
Okay, and so given that, to the CLA and the clerk, can this be expedited before council, at council before Thanksgiving?
We certainly can try. Part of the holdup at this point is getting the ordinance from the city attorney's office. We're in communication with them. We hope to hopefully have that matter resolved by the end of the week.
Okay, so when would it go to council?
As soon as we get the ordinance, we could schedule. So we just need to work out that contingency with the city attorney.
Is the city attorney here that handles this? No?
Yes.
Okay. When will the ordinance be ready? It's the obvious question.
It seems that Ms. Prieto has advanced knowledge, so we're hoping that it is at the end of the week, and if not, we'll push for as soon as possible.
Okay, I understand that these projects need to move forward, and I think, given the fact that the enormity of these projects in that it will provide 4% of our source of energy, tremendous project, gets us to renewable, gets us to more energy efficiency. It's a great project, but we usually don't allow these to move forward without ordinances. But given the urgency, we're going to move this to council if I have concurrence from Mr. Zine, but we will not hear him in council unless we have the ordinance. So whoever needs to work that out, we'll move it to council and hear it there, but we won't hear it, we'll continue it if the ordinances are not ready in council. Is that fair, appropriate, good?
I got a question.
All right, one more question for Mr. Zine.
I got a question for Dr. Pickle. This shows that the report dated today was prepared by PA Consulting to Dr. Pickle. Where's Dr. Pickle? Dr. Pickle still here?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. What did this report cost us? This review by your...
$40,000.
Okay, when are we going to get a staff for you so they can do these instead of consulting with this continuing group that's been involved in a lot of projects? I thought we were going to give you staff so you could do it in-house instead of having PA Consulting continue to do these.
The headhunter was hired by the Personnel Department last Friday, and I'm meeting with the headhunter at 4 o'clock today.
How long have you been on board in your position?
Since February 14th.
What year?
This year.
I'm just looking at another $40,000 I could have gone to pay for staff.
Well,
And I haven't seen PA Consulting.
some of these things require current market information that my staff may not be privy to. Going forward, I would still be using consulting support for some things that require either current information or to have expertise that you can't possibly hire for the breadth of a very limited staff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pickle. So with the agreement of Mr. Zhang, we'll forward this to council, which an anticipated hearing date when?
Whenever you like, we work with your office to schedule something before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And if you have the ordinance, we'll proceed. If not, we'll continue.
Okay, sounds good. So with that, we'll have this move out of committee as a report from the chair with the concurrence of Mr. Zine. Great, thank you. Any other items?
That completes the agenda.
Meeting adjourned. No objections. Thank you.